It's like I'm already jumping through a million hoops here.
Yes.
I'm not going to let my baby be another one.
Absolutely.
So if anyone has a problem, they can come and talk to me and I'll give them a mouthful.
Wow.
So I just did it.
Space,
I just did it. Yeah, I just claimed the space. And a lot of people actually supported that and encouraged that and came up to me. And I remember I had a few lecturers that were like, oh, it's fine. Like, good on you.
We would like to acknowledge that we are on stolen Yagara and Turrbal lands, and as settlers of colour, we reflect upon the damaging legacy of colonisation. Always was, always will be.
My name is Allirah Fisher. I am a Yir'un-Yalangi Birri woman on my grandfather's side, so up north, inner North Queensland country. And on my grandmother's side, I'm a Cobble Cobble woman and also Kanakan, South Sea Islander. So both families, strong ties to Cherbourg as well. There's a lot of family being taken there. But yes, and as a creative, I find it really challenging to put into words what I create. And it's something that I'm still developing as an artist because I think it just goes so much deeper than what I essentially do for work. I create pieces of work, I dance, I create opportunities for other people to create, which I love the most. I create children, I create spaces. There's so many things that I create that encompasses who I am. And I deeply believe that we're all creators. So it's just the essence of who we are, essentially, as humans.
Within many of those things that you create, am I sensing a common theme of creating safe spaces and creating change with what you create?
Yes. I think change is a huge one, but I think it's more embodying the embodiment of yourself and not resisting. I think that's where change happens. So it's more of an authentic and just like a natural process rather than trying to strive for something, because this idea of success and striving, I struggle to fit into that. So I think it's more just the natural flow of embodying who you are and your identity. And that's where real change happens.
A lot of creatives will be thinking about whether they would like to be parents or creating children, and a lot of folks will find that quite challenging, or like that there's some conflict there. Can you tell me about creating children and being creative?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, my journey as a creative, through my childhood and teenage years, I was really striving. I wanted to be a professional dancer. That was kind of my dream. And was so inspired by Bangarra and just all the work that they do and their storytelling and just that connection of traditional dance and contemporary dance. And I've really connected with that. And so I trained really hard in the dance realm and went to ACPA, studied there, and that was kind of my stepping stone of building myself up to get into those more professional areas. And then unexpectedly, I had a baby at 18. I was 18 when I fell pregnant, 19 when I had her, and still so young, didn't know anything about the world. I was confident that I could raise a baby, but looking back now, I was like, wow, I knew nothing. I really knew nothing at that time. And my daughter really taught me a lot of the lessons and who I am now. But yes, so had her, and I was very much in the mindset of my dream is over for me. That's it. I can't dance anymore. I'm going to be a mum now. All my energy and focus has to go on her. My body is going to go through so many changes, and if you're in the dance world and you're training professionally, you understand how important technique and all those things are when you're trying to train to be, at a professional level. So I just felt like I would lose all that and it'd be way too hard for me to try and get back in there and gain that again. So I kind of gave up almost in being a creative. through that journey, and kind of just channeled everything into my daughter. And yeah, I was doing, like, after a while, I then, that's when I kind of started to tap into dance as more of a thing on the side, and just like an activity, an extracurricular, a hobby. And I was still connected with a lot of friends in the dance area. And so I was doing things as a mum. But it wasn't until probably I had my son that my mindset really changed, and I was like, I can do this. I can be a creator, be a creative, be a dancer, and redefine what that means. I don't need to have this Western white lens of what a dancer is. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I am at now in my journey, is like redefining what that looks like for me and how I fit into this world with that identity. So, yeah, I recommend people have children, because I think it actually makes you learn a lot of new things about yourself, and you see the world so differently. Obviously, if you're in a space to want to do that, then do it.
Yeah. And that connection, or that reflection of like stepping outside the white lens, when I think about people having children a little bit early in life, if we step outside of our the lens of this, so-called Australia contemporary society lens, like that, having children at younger ages was like a lot more common.
Yeah.
And if I think about my parents, like, they had me quite young, and it was part of like they were set on that. But yeah, my mum is a singer and a creative as well, and she was able to like fit in that creative work, like working from home and like teaching in the evenings, and performing at like weddings and funerals and things over the weekend. And she was really able to wear those many creative and professional hats, and balance those two things. What kind of effect does that have on your like time management with like making time to be creative?
Whoa. I'm constantly creative. Like I really struggle with time management, if I'm being honest. But I'm getting better. I have so many things going on at once. And so I've learned to really embrace chaos. And I think in chaos, there are so many beautiful moments of reflection, and like moments of where I'm drawing inspiration to create. So through the chaos, there's creation. And yeah, I'm creating while I'm with my children. I'm creating when I'm without them. I'm creating late at night. The way that my mind works, and spiritually what I've been trying to do as well in terms of being a mum, is to really just go with the flow in what I'm feeling and trust my intuition. So if I feel like I'm in a space of I'm really channeling that creative energy, then that's what I'm going to do. If I feel like it's time for me to be a mum here, and really just step into that for like a week or two, and like that everything else has to go on hold, like I'm allowing myself to do that and be okay with that and accept that, and not always live up to other people's expectations and their expectation of my capacity. I'm just trying to sit with where I am, because my babies are still young as well. And yeah, time management is not my greatest asset, no. I feel like I work 24/7. I'm always moving. I'm always doing something. But trying to, slow down and have more tender moments and find the creation in that, instead of always looking towards what's next. So, but even touching on what you said before, around the normalization of having babies young. I was just thinking back, like I'm the eldest daughter of, I've got 6 little sisters and 1 little brother. So I'm 29 this year, and my youngest sister is 10 turning 11. I still struggle to remember all the ages, honestly. There's that many. And then through the years as well, like my family, my parents have taken on other children, and my dad will often say, like, this is my adopted son, this is my adopted daughter, and they would live with us from time to time, like extended family or close friends and things like that. So I've always been around children, and in massive cohorts of people living closely. And my mum had me when she was 18, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's been something that's definitely normalised. I remember being so anxious about telling my parents that I was pregnant, and they were just so happy. They were so happy that another baby was coming. And my sister, she's the fourth, yes, Jolanda, she's pregnant now and she's 19 as well. So, yeah, it's just, and I think when you come from the traditions of having children young, it's definitely that, like, they're raised in community, you know, like, and that's why it's so normalized. It's like I had my baby sleep with me, like co-sleep with me my two youngest ones still co-sleep with me, but my eldest till she was about 5, and just that closeness and that community and having aunties that are mums and uncles that are always around. And we raise our babies together. So I think that plays a huge part in my support being a creative as well. And also just, not feeling like the entire burden of child rearing is on me, especially as a single mum. Like, it's huge. It's a huge part of my journey.
I was listening to some women's stories recently, and they specialize in sort of setting up like a postpartum support team around the mother, because when there's folks that live sort of a bit more detached from communities, they can be siloed off into their own little isolated castle, right? So it's very, very interesting.
So important.
Educating everyone around expectant mothers, especially the men around them.
And the roles.
The roles, of like of the support, the immense amount of support that is required to be able to play that role of
I think the hard part is the world that we live in, the cost of living and like all these things. It's like we're forced into this like capitalized way of day to day. And I think that's the struggle, is the cost of children. And I think that's probably what keeps a lot of people on the edge of deciding if they want to have kids. And a lot of the anxiety of having kids young is like, I'm not really set up in work and I don't have a lot of money and things like this. And when you think about back then when we lived in, like, when we were very much living in tight-knit communities and everything was shared, resources were shared, food was shared, shelter was shared, there wasn't a lot of that anxiety surrounding those factors. So I think that plays a huge role as well, which I completely understand, because kids aren't cheap in the country that we live in. Yeah.
You mentioned when you were a child yourself, you gained some inspiration from folks like absolute trailblazing groups like Bangarra. How did that come your way, and what was it like to perhaps see yourself reflected?
I think through my childhood, when it came to dance, there was no classes that really taught anything that I could identify with in terms of culture.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot of classes in like jazz, contemporary, ballet, hip hop. Hip hop was always my favorite because I felt like I connected with that the most, being a young black woman that grew up in urban. I grew up in Woodridge, actually, which is, if you know that, 4114, shout out.
When I went there, it reminded me of like some of my neighbouring Western Sydney suburbs when I was growing up in the 90s. Like it felt so familiar to Western Sydney.
Yeah, so I grew up there in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. And just being a street kid, like that was kind of my upbringing, and, family around the streets, friends around the streets out until the lights come off. And so I really connected with...
Lots of family homes close together, that
lots
kind
of family homes close together,
right.
So I really connected with that street hip-hop style, and I think that's where that came in.
Yeah.
And so, really followed that, like hip-hop, dance, even music a little bit too. I used to write, but would never have the confidence to share, which is funny when it came to music. And I think it wasn't until high school, and I think thinking about the timelines too, I think in society, that's when things started to shift as well around how Australia looks at First Nations people and things like this. So there was a lot more culture coming into my schooling through high school, and I was exposed to more of, what being a Black creative could look like. And I remember in high school I created with my sister and a few other First Nations students a dance group, and we went to Brisbane, Eisteddfod, and that was my first introduction to creating something that was contemporary dance and traditional dance and storytelling, and we did a piece around the stolen generations.
Wow.
And we were actually learning about that in school at the time, so it was a beautiful way to embody that and then share it.
Wow.
And we won, actually. Just side note. But yeah, so that was a beautiful journey. And then I just remember, going to shows, watching Bengara tour, and just really being a young kid so inspired and just being like, I want to do that one day. Like, I see myself up there.
Did you come and see them in Brizzy?
Yes, yeah. Always in Brisbane.
Right,
I
like
didn't
a QPAC sort of?
QPAC, yes.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So like big grand theatre.
Big grand theatre.
High production.
Yes. So yeah, and then, as I said, finished school and went to ACPA, and just so grateful that, that organisation was there as a stepping stone for, young First Nations people who want to be creative and dream big.
Can you tell me about that institution? What is it?
Yeah, so Aboriginal Centre of Performing Arts.
Okay.
And it's seen as like it's almost like a NASDA. Have you heard of NASDA in Sydney?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay.
What's
so
that one?
It's a First Nations performing arts
Okay, right.
organisation as well. But a lot of people from NASDA have gone on to then dance in Bengara and things like that. So it was kind of like that for Brisbane.
Right.
And there were students from all over the state, a lot from up north, some from TSI came down. I had some PNG sisters. So, yeah, a lot of rural and urban people coming into Brisbane. A lot of the students would live in hostels around. Me, myself, I was living on the north side at the time, so I had to travel in on the train every day. But, yeah, it was just a beautiful space of being around other First Nations people every single day. And there'd be dance classes, music class, so that looked different. There was some production stuff, some recording stuff. We'd do some singing, choir, and then acting as well. So they were kind of the three things, and it was kind of setting us up to be like a triple threat in the industry.
Yeah. Did you find you took to the non-dancing elements as well?
Yeah, I really did. I really did.
Including music?
Yes. Yeah.
At that
stage? I've always loved to sing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I love singing. But I have stage fright. I don't like singing in front of people that I'm not. I mean, get me around my sisters in the car and I am like Adele, like literally. But yeah, when it comes to singing, I don't know, I haven't got there yet. And I think that's okay as well. I think we can keep things to ourselves when we're being creative as well, and we can channel it in a way that's just for us, and it's, we don't have to put everything on a platform and share it with everyone. But I actually was going more down the acting route when I got into ACPA. So I kind of went there for dance, and I knew that was kind of like my core skill, but then found this new love for acting. And I think it was my acting teacher too. She really pushed me and inspired me, and I did a lot of shows, and so I kind of, and I feel like at the time that industry was a lot better to kind of get into as a First Nations creative rather than the dance industry. It was still quite small at that time, so I was kind of being a bit strategic, I think, too.
Oh, right.
But I loved it all, genuinely. Yeah.
And was there a certain like kind of pathway that you were looking at with acting at the time?
No. I didn't really. I only stayed. I was at ACPA for a year, and then I fell pregnant.
Yeah.
So I had to literally make a decision. Like in my head, when I fell pregnant at that time, it was like my dream or this baby. Like that was my thinking. Like it was very, like a dichotomy almost of like, am I going to be a mom and like give all this up, or am I going to, you know, give up my baby? And that wasn't even like giving up my baby wasn't even a thought, honestly, because in my family, it's normalized to just once you're pregnant, that means it's your time to be a mum. And so, it was my time. It was my time.
And so your creative pursuits outside of your children took a pause for some time until you had your son, you say?
Yes, yeah.
And then how did they come back?
When I had my son, it was when I had my daughter, actually, I started studying social work. So I put that on hold, but then I was like, I can do something else. Like I can, you know, I've got other things that I want to do, which is fine. And I think creatives are very much like that. We have so many hats that we wear, right? And we feel like we can do everything, and we can. So at that time, I was like, I can do this. I can go to uni. And I was actually the first person in my family to go to uni. So that was huge.
Wow.
Yeah. And I did that with a little baby, and I'd take her in there with me to class and really just challenge the system.
Okay.
Not in a vocal way, but just embodying it.
I mean, right now we're still having that conversation of like, where is it appropriate to take babies?
Right?
And lots of men are piping in about it.
Everywhere. Like,
so
honestly.
did you feel like the uni tolerated, or they were supportive at the time?
I was a bit anxious having to do that, but I just thought, like, I'm sick of this. I'm really over it. And I knew that as an Aboriginal woman and a mum, and I was young, and, you know, I came from a low socioeconomic background with low education and all these things. I was like, I'm already jumping through a million hoops here. Yes. Like, I am not going to let my baby be another one.
Absolutely.
So if anyone has a problem, they can come and talk to me, and I'll give them a mouthful.
Wow.
So I just did it.
Space,
I just did it. Yeah, I just claimed the space. And a lot of people actually supported that and encouraged that and came up to me. And I remember I had a few lecturers that were like, oh, it's fine, like, good on you. And so, I felt empowered to continue to do that. And she was fine. Like, she was on the boob, so I'd just pop my boob out, sit there with my laptop, have one hand being a student, have one arm being a mum. Wow. And I did it. I made it work. And I studied social work, which was something that I was also really passionate about and knew I wanted to do, was giving back to community and helping, you know, people, families, First Nations families, because I feel like I really identified with families in the struggle. Because at that time, looking back, that's how I felt like my upbringing was. It's like, how can I channel this and my experience and use that to give back to my community? And so, I studied social work, and that journey actually, I learned so much about myself. That really was the beginning of this awakening for me. Okay. Was because social work is it's definitely a lot about, you know, society and structural systems and all these different things. But it's very reflective. There's a lot of inner work. There's a lot of looking at yourself, because you're the tool, right? When you work with people. So I think all of that stuff was really my first kind of insight to what white people would call therapy. I don't know, but I was myself. I was doing it myself. I was going through that myself. Yeah.
I feel like I hear a similar experience with folks who would be studying mental health or psychology or something. Like your first patient is yourself.
Exactly.
Sort of thing. Right.
That's right. Yeah. So, that took me on a wild journey, and I'm so grateful for that experience. And it just gave me a lot of the tools that I needed to articulate all the things that I was already feeling inside myself. I knew that I felt very strongly about activism, and I knew that, you know, there was so much injustice and oppression and all these things, but I didn't know how to say that at that time. And so, very, very grateful for that experience. It helped me a lot.
And I feel like if I think about the kind of students that would pursue a social work degree, that they might be the kind of people that would be supportive peers. How did your peers react to you at the time?
I didn't have many friends there, to be honest. There weren't a lot of, like, I would look around the room and I was like one of two black people, you know what I mean? And so, and I'm the type of person that, like, I don't really make an effort to, like I said, I have a lot of things going on, and if I'm, you know, brought into an interaction with someone, I'll make an effort, but I won't really go out of my way. I kind of just move through life, you know, in my own kind of world, doing what I need to do. But yeah, looking around the room and just seeing that, you know, I was one of two dark-skinned Aboriginal people there, sometimes the only in my class when it was in smaller groups. I always just felt this like anger, to be honest, inside of me, almost of like, yeah, in our own country, like we don't even, I can't even see a reflection of myself in these, you know, bigger universities and things like this, and, you know, where's our mob? And I channeled that energy to only like want to complete my degree more, and like, you know, we need to create more opportunities. And so, yeah, I personally struggled with building relationships because I had this internal like anger towards the system, I think. And yeah, I did have quite a few deadly sisters and aunties that I met through the Allirah unit at QUT, and I would just hang out in black spaces, to be honest, because it's where I felt most safe. And you know, yeah.
Were there any like units that would touch on, say, Indigenous health or that kind of thing?
Yeah, it'd always be really funny. I remember sitting with one of my sister girls who was also studying social work, and it'd always be a white professor up there talking about Indigenous health, and we would just look at each other. And, like, you know, it's all about stats and we're all put into boxes and things like this. And it's just funny, the fact that we are both Aboriginal women in a white institution learning from a white woman about ourselves. And, yeah, that in itself is just, like, frustrating. Like, colonialism still exists in these ways, and that's how I see it. But there were some lecturers that, you know, were very community-led and really encouraged us to speak and use our voices, and would acknowledge that, you know, there's First Nations people here, so please, like, if at any point you want to chime in or jump up and say something, and which I respected, but at the same time I was like, why can't you guys just, like, go out in community? And, like, they just felt so detached from community, but they were talking about community. And I didn't like that. Like, why couldn't we invite people in? And so, yeah, there are a lot of things that I saw happen through uni that I was like, there's such a better way to do this, such a better way to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was your pathway towards working in Indigenous health once you gained that qualification?
I was actually working there before I gained the qualification.
Okay. Right.
So my family were heavily involved in starting up the Institute for Urban Indigenous Health.
Okay.
So a lot of my family members work in that sphere, Indigenous health. And so an opportunity come up for me to work there, and I was just a little 18-year-old receptionist, you know, pregnant with my baby.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And worked there for, I think it was about 2 years. Yeah, two or 3 years on reception. And I would just, the people I would meet coming in and out of the org and just learning all the different people's different disciplines and things like that, and the different roles that they had. And I was like, I could do more than just sit behind a computer and answer phone calls. Like, I have so many skills. How am I going to make this happen? And so, yeah, I started, you know, talking to people, looking into what degree would work for me. And I knew I didn't want to be labelled as like, I was thinking about nursing or teaching, to be honest.
Right.
But I was like, no, I don't just want to do one thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I loved about social work is it's so multifaceted and I could change roles and do different things and it's very broad in the scope. So I was like, I'm doing this. And then I actually still worked there as while I was in uni. So moved around a bit. But yeah, it was my family that really inspired me. I think I was there for about 10 years actually in Indigenous health, doing various different roles, working in community. But yeah, my family and all of the people before them that paved the way, that was kind of the inspiration for me to go into that field.
Okay. Okay. So you survived and passed through the extreme minority of being a First Nations person in our university education system, and then you're entering the workforce and you're finding a bit of a craving for that creativity in your life again. How does that play out?
Yeah. Well, I was always kind of still doing it on the side.
Okay.
So I would either be involved in dance classes just for fun, for fitness, to catch up with dance friends. Like my little sister also is a dancer, and I'm very close with her. So, you know, sometimes it would just be our thing to do to hang out. We'd go to a dance class and then there were points where I was teaching a few things just as friends and opportunities come up. I was actually in like a hip hop crew and we competed, competed in a few comps. And so there was always I was always kind of doing things on the side. Like there'd be one night a week where I was training, doing something creative.
Right.
So I never really lost touch, but I think it was more so my mental state of like the drive. Like I was just doing it as fun. I never saw myself as fully embodying being an artist or a creative after that.
Okay. After parenthood or after study?
Well, after I had my daughter, I kind of was clutching more onto social work. Like that was where I was going to go.
Yeah, okay.
But it wasn't until, more recently when I left my kid's dad and I really had to stop and like look at myself and be like, who am I now? Because my identity was so built around the things around me. And attached to that and the role I play in everyone else's life. So it was kind of like a moment of what do I want to do with my life and who am I and what do I really want? You know, when you have to ask yourself that, it's like you have all these expectations on you and you've done this and you've done that, so you should probably just do that because it's the easiest thing to do. But it's like, but what do you really want? What's that movie from The Notebook?
I don't know it.
Oh, okay. If you know, you know. What do you really want? So I had to just ask myself that question. And I want to create. I've always had the dream of having my own creative space, like a big hub where young people are coming and going and being creative and things are being developed and, you know, I can just channel ideas into. And, I was like, I can do this. That time in my life actually was really hard, and I should probably touch on this. And I'd experienced DV, and I left that relationship in quite a harsh way, and I was in a really hard time in my life, like lowest of low. I'd just lost my grandmother also through that time, and I'd just had my third baby, who was a COVID baby. So I'd been living in isolation, had a COVID baby. I was homeschooling my daughter, working part-time from home, homeschooling my little sister and my little brother because my mum and dad both still had to work. They were, my mum's like a nurse and my dad's in construction, so their jobs were fine.
Okay.
So I had to kind of then be the clutch for my family. My nan had passed not long after. I was in quite a struggling relationship, and just reached a point after that all ended of like, very low mentally. And I think it was almost like after that and and I sat in that for a little while, to be honest. And I think that's okay. Sometimes I look back and think I feel guilty for sitting in that for how long I did. But I've got to a place now where I'm like, it's okay that you grieved for that long or that, you had that time, because that was actually such a pivotal moment for this like phoenix rising, which is kind of what I'm in now. So yeah, it was a journey, and I got to a really low point, and now I'm coming up, and this is kind of the come up for me, is like really I had to shed my skin. I had to shed everything that that was expected of me, everything from my past, everything that I'd gone through, and it was like almost like a clean slate for me to start again and rebirth myself and redefine who I am, how the fuck I want to show up. And so I'm grateful for that now looking back, but at the time it was hard. It was really hard. Yeah.
That sounds like many, many layers upon what would be a more typical COVID experience. So you had a clean slate. Where did you start?
I was going to women's group every Thursday with my shout out to Auntie Shantae and Auntie Sharon, love yous. I was going to women's group every Thursday, and that was what I needed to do for me during that time, for my healing, and to be around other women who I knew had been through that, and they inspired me, and they were like my beacon of hope and my light of like, you'll be okay. And they helped me so much through that time. So I was going to women's group, connecting with these amazing women that were just on such a similar journey as me. And, in my family, I have so many amazing Black women, but I've just never been able to connect with, women in my family in a way of how we see things in our future, and how we see life, and how we want to, grow in a certain type of way. I just never was able to tap in that way. So meeting these women was my first experience of that. And it was just incredible. And it's happened spiritually. I know that, like just looking through everything that's gone on and how I've met people, and they truly inspired me, and their creative gifts inspired me, because they're all amazing artists in their own way, and are so underappreciated and undervalued. I think we have some of the best artists here in Brisbane, but just not respected, I think. And obviously the industry is still growing and things like this, but they truly were my beacon of hope and inspired me, my healing journey. And it really took off my creative works through my healing. So it was like a way that I could channel everything that I was feeling and what I was going through into being creative, and then trying to make money out of it, essentially. So that's how it started. It was that hard moment and the rising of that led me to being a creative, fully embodying being a creative. Right.
You introduced me to Auntie Shantae Link, and I've had her here for a session on the pod. And at the time, yourself, Auntie Shantae, and Auntie Sharon were crowdfunding to head to so-called Canada for a conference. Can you tell me about that experience looking back on it now?
Oh, man. Looking back, like, it's just given me the confidence of like, man, we are hustlers. Like, we are go-getters. Like, we can do anything we put our mind to. That was just a small dream. We all wanted to, it was a big dream. We all wanted to get there, and knew that we had huge roles that we played in so many women's lives, and how important that would be for not only our journey, but other people that we share space with. And our community sent us there. Genuinely, our community backed us and sent us there. We had no funding from any orgs or, a lot of the people that were at the conference, other First Nations people, were there because their work paid for them to be there, and they were being paid to be there. And we were just these three little, grassroots black women, like rocking up, like, there because we truly wanted to be there. And we knew that experience was just going to be so profound for us. And it was. It was absolutely incredible. I just really tried to soak in every moment that I had when I was there. And truly the best moments were being able to be so closely connected with the aunties and in each other's presence. We haven't been able to be like that. We were living together for 2 weeks, traveling together for 2 weeks. So just being so close to them and our yarns reflecting on things and at the end of each day. And it was all those moments that really were just so profound. There are a lot of really beautiful moments from the conference too.
What was it called again?
Healing Our Spirit Worldwide. I actually got it tattooed on my arm.
Oh, wow.
I know.
And was it a First Nations women's conference?
No, so it was First Nations people from around the world.
Okay.
And it was looking at how they've used Indigenous practices to heal from colonization.
Wow.
Yeah. So then there were so many rooms talking about different topics. It might be drug and alcohol, sexual abuse, domestic violence, back on country, so traditional practices. There were so many just different things. So every day we're going through what are we going to go to today? And we're all trying to go to different things and then come back and talk about it. And there was a youth thing and there was a lot of creative stuff too.
Yeah.
There was a lot of beautiful, beautiful ceremony. So blessed to witness that and be engaged in that. And by the Squamish people that we got to sit in and experience, and that was so profound as well. But it was just those reflections with the aunties. And the biggest thing looking back was the confirmation that what we are doing here and the impact that we have in our small community is confirmed to be working within the rest of the world as well. What we're trying to do in terms of taking women back onto country to heal from domestic violence and sexual abuse, and to really reclaim those spaces and reclaim our traditional practices. That was the essence, that was the answer of this conference, this big question of how do we heal from colonization. And so we came back with just a new sense of motivation, confirmation, excitement to just continue to do what we're doing and dive into it even deeper and not be ashamed of it. Because I think as blackfellas living in urban, spaces as we do with city blacks, as they say, there's almost a shame or there's a lot of protocols too around certain things, when it comes to culture and obviously we make sure we're always following protocol when we do what we do, but there's this sense of shame when it comes to painting up or dancing. And I know that for a lot of my because I have close friends and family that feel that shame, and I carry those stories with me. And I was there at one point when I was younger. And so, it just helped us to really dive into saturating every space we're in with culture and being okay with it. And hoping that, we can normalize it.
Right. That sounds like an amplification of you as a student walking into those spaces.
Show up and show out. Yes. Yeah.
And I think looking at your journey of being super inspired by Bangarra and dance and going all in on that, and then taking a little bit of a breath and distance with early parts of motherhood, and then finding ways to weave a bit of creativity work whilst diving into social work. I think I can look at the sort of next stage of your practice as kind of weaving together of the two. Yeah.
Yes, you're right on.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now I'm trying to find, because I'm also trying to be more in this healing energy, right? Because all through my social work practice, I was very much in the trauma energy. I'm at the front in community. I'm working on the front lines with families, really sitting with them in those hard places, and so it was a no-brainer that I was spiraling into a hard place, especially with, you know, things that I had going on in my own life, and there was no escape for me. It was like work, home. It was all just chaos. And so, yeah, I'm really trying to sit now for my own accountability and for what I feel like is the betterment of community in intergenerational healing. And let's stop talking about intergenerational trauma, because we know that we all have trauma. You know, it's inherited, unfortunately. But we also have intergenerational strengths, intergenerational skills, there are so many things that we have inherited that are beautiful and amazing. And I think if we look at trauma through a healing lens, we don't need to dive deep into the yuckiness, and we can create spaces where, okay, this happened, but how are we going to move from that, and how are we going to use that to transform? Let's channel that, because our ancestors did that, you know? And, yeah, it's something that was also brought, I believe, passed down, was the healing. And so we need to get back to thinking like that. And so at the moment, I'm working on a huge project that is consuming my life. 3 weeks out, Yir'un Spirit Woman, which shares the stories of Anishante and Anisharan, and their journey through their trials and tribulations as Black women, and their experience of that, and into a place of where they are now in this healing journey, and how that looks in community, and how that looks with our traditional practices through a Black lens. So, yeah, it's a makeup of dance. There's a little bit of theatre, a little bit of spoken word, some song, a lot of film, but it's absolutely beautiful, and it's really interconnected with a lot of the women's stories that are in our circle too, that we carry. So even though it's Anisharan and Anishante sharing in the film, there are so many similar stories of the women that we're connected with. So it's really just honouring them. And there's also there's a very special piece at the start where we honour our grandmothers, because these are their stories too. And we wouldn't be here without them. So all of that is just deeply connected through the whole show. And I'm so excited to share it. Very nervous because it's such a vulnerable thing.
Yeah.
And I really want to pay tribute and do honour to the aunties and to women that have experienced this in the best way that I can. So I'm feeling the heat.
Yeah.
But I'm just telling myself, like, it'll be what it's meant to be, and that's okay. Yeah.
Have you had a chance to have such a spotlight on a project like this before?
No.
Okay.
No. This is my first time. So I definitely know all of those things play into it. But it's also such a personal journey for me of, like, my own self-esteem and my own confidence, and, like, stepping up to that place. And it's like, if you want to achieve your dreams, like, it's a personal self-growth journey too. This is part of your healing. Like, yeah, even coming on the podcast today, it's like, you know, I was so anxious to do this, but it's like, I know I need to, because I'm only going to grow. It's only going to bring new opportunities. It's only going to grow me more as a person. It's, you know, so yeah, I just try to really channel that mindset, and just be myself, and everything will be okay.
And you mentioned film there, and I also understand the dance is a big part of the performance. What is it that you're building
In terms of the show?
Yeah.
Like the dance?
What are the elements of the show?
Yeah,
and
okay.
What is coming up?
So as I mentioned before, we're honouring grandmothers at the very start and paying tribute, which I think is so beautiful to start with and really ground ourselves in that space. And it's more of a colonial look at our women and the hardships that they've gone through. And then it takes us on a journey through childhood, and the aunties talk about that and their childhood experiences. And then we've adapted pieces of dance to then retell that story through movements. People will sit and listen to the film, and then they will see it play out in live performance, which is beautiful. So yeah, it kind of goes through their childhood, the good and bad. It's not just all bad as well. Yeah, there's so many beautiful things, and we've tried to interconnect ancient and traditional elements within it too. So even though, you know, they're more from they're still alive and it's very much a contemporary show, it weaves in different traditional practices through it as well, because we're trying to bring that back and we're trying to revive that. And then it also like takes people back in timeline of thinking about our ancestors. And yeah, so there'll be layers of different reflections through the show, which I'm excited to hear how people perceive it all once they view it. But yeah, it takes us through childhood, adolescence years as well, where things were a bit tougher, motherhood. So we touch on their experiences as Black mothers and trying to fit into society and live up to societal expectations, which again is part of my story and a lot of other women's stories. So it's very healing for the cast even to be involved in this work. And then it goes into sisterhood and like what tidderhood is and how important that is for Black women, and our healing journeys, and to be able to be the amazing women that we are. We need our sisters. And then there's a beautiful part where it kind of steps into more of this traditional healing, and it's like our ancestors are coming back. And so there's like this really beautiful cleansing, like ceremony piece that happens in the show. And I'm so excited for that part because it's just bring your tissues. And then it goes into a participatory piece actually, which I'm really excited about because and I was actually inspired to put that in the show because of something that happened in Canada that I witnessed. And I don't know if I want to share exactly what it is because it's something that I don't want people to expect is coming.
Sure.
But it's for our men. It's for our men in community.
Okay.
And it's a moment that they can, be involved in what's happening with women in some way, and then leave feeling like they have a new sense of accountability in community to our women. And so I feel like thinking about how I'm connecting social justice and social work with art, it's like there can be moments that we move people in a way that they then want to change or act differently. And I think that's very much played out in the show too through that part. And then it ends in like a beautiful big celebration, which showcases a lot of the stuff that we do and the women in group. I'm always trying to find ways that when I have a platform, I'm sharing that platform with other people. I think that is so important to me, and making it participatory. I think if we're creating work, how can other people be involved in that work in some way, inspired to do something and not just kind of seeing and taking it in and remaining comfortable, but let's challenge them a little bit to like tap into their creativity and be involved too. Because like I said at the start, I believe we're all creators and we've just got to be inspired by the right person or encouraged by the right person. So yeah, there's definitely elements of all of that through the show, and also platforming and showcasing so many other First Nations women's work and art. And yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be amazing. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the cast. How many people are involved in a production like this?
Our creative team exists of 3 people.
Wow.
Yeah, quite literally. So, yeah, I mean, we have limited funding. Like, this has been, yeah. It's my biggest platform, but it's not like a lot of things in the arts, they're not properly funded. So at the moment there are 3 people in my creative team. The cast is full of six dancers, and everyone in the creative team is also a dancer.
In the show?
Yes, in the show. So we're wearing 100 different hats. My sister's leading choreography. Erica is producing. And I'm doing all the artistic directing. So, yeah, it's been a challenge for me and a new way of embodying and being in the show, but then also having to step out and try to see it from a different lens and like put things together and yeah.
You put that director hat on.
Yes, which I actually really enjoy doing. I've come to know about myself. So I'm excited to... We're going to be touring the show. We've had opportunities come up, so it's going to be moving around. And I'm excited through one of those moments to not dance and to actually step out and appreciate it in a different way. Right. So, yeah, and just see what that feels like. Try something new. So, yeah.
You were touching on intergenerational healing before. What do you hope is the transformational power of these kind of artistic practices?
I think a lot of our people, and not just our people, I mean everyone, but my heart is with our people, are really stuck in what's happened to them, really stuck in that. And their identity is in that. Their identity is in... this happened to me, so that's who I am, and this pain is all I will ever be. They're in that, they live in that pain body. And I think how I see it is if we can move to a place of, you know, reclaiming all of those ancestral strengths and, you know, be on that healing journey of where we're looking at it from that lens, that other more enlightened lens of like, how can I use what was done to me for good? And it's more of a spiritual thing as well, of being like, I went through this for a reason. It was hell, yes. Like no one is ever invalidating people's feelings and their experience for what they've gone through. But it's like once we get to a place of where we're through it and past it, how can we then use that and transform it into something that then becomes a stream that goes out to everyone else and inspires them to do the same. So that's kind of what I see this as. It's like, how can we be streams to go out and for other people to be inspired and have conversations like this? I don't know what the bigger picture is. I mean, I know what an ideal world looks like to me, but I'm just trying to be a good ancestor. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So I think with the current world I'm living in now and the tools that I've been given, the purpose that I'm on, I'm just trying to use that to be a good ancestor. And that's how I look at it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think we were at this event outside of QPAC. I think the name was Clancestry. Was that right? And the hip-hop musician Barker was playing. And your daughter jumped up and danced.
Can you danced.
Like that was, you know, that was last year, was it? It was it
last year?
Could have been this year.
Time management, I'm telling you. I can't even.
Sense of time.
Yeah, sense of time.
I just remember it was like within a year where I'd been to like some big shows like Kendrick and like this and that and like seen Lauryn Hill and stuff. And then something about that show, her energy, the connection with people, the connection with the audience and community, the live drums, the like, you know, survivor of coming through the prison system, of existing as a First Nations parent, survivor of being, you know, involved in drugs and overcome all these things like that.
Yeah.
energy. It was just one of the most
So
incredible
inspiring.
hip hop shows I'd ever seen. Energy unmatched.
Me too.
And then your daughter's on stage dancing with her. How did this happen?
Yeah. Okay. So, gosh, I actually connected with Sis Barker online actually, while we were like fundraising for Canada, the trip. We actually done a dance with Bring a Plate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we used one of her songs. What was it? Titters. We used Titters. And we danced to it, filmed it, and I chucked it up and I tagged her and she saw it. And then just started connecting, yarning as sister girls, and just stayed connected. She was supporting a lot of what we do. She's, very much at that grassroots level and loves that stuff. So, she was just so supportive. And then I saw that she was, we were always saying, like, when you come to Brisbane, sis, like, we got to connect. And I saw that she was coming for Clancestry. And so we organised to link up. And some of the sister girls, or one of the sister girls, Kalika, actually knows her from when she was living in Sydney. So, there's people in our close-knit community that are connected with Barker as well. And so I said, hey, like, the aunties want to take you out on country. Like, do you have time when you're up here? Let's make it happen. And she'd been seeing a lot of the work that we were doing and was always so encouraging and supportive. And so, we got the privilege and honour to take Barker out on beautiful Cobble Cobble country with Auntie Sharon and Auntie Shantae and a lot of other beautiful sister girls. And it was such a profound day. Like, it was just so emotional. There were tears, there were laughs, it was amazing. And just to be able to connect with her as another sister, you know, like, we weren't even in that space of like, like, it was just knowing her story and connecting with her story was what we were all there for. And seeing her come up, you know, and like, we were all hustlers on that journey too, of like, we're trying to come up from this, like, we're trying to channel that and use it. And so it was just beautiful to connect with her in that way. And then I was actually just telling her about how my daughter is such a huge fan of Barker, and my breakup song actually was King Brown. You think you a man? This is my house. Like, literally. That was my breakup song. So my daughter just like heard Barker nonstop. And so huge fan. And she's like, are you guys going to come to Clancestry? I was like, hell yeah, we're coming. And she's like, yeah, invite the girls up to dance. So I remember my daughter was like practicing all night, so stressed, biggest gig she's ever had. Like, she was just, So, and she got to dance on stage for Titters as well. And just seeing her up there, she was, so proud. Such a proud moment for me, such a proud mum moment to stand back and be like, wow, this is our next generation, you know, and this is how we can really empower them. Like, I expose my kids to a lot of the truths about the struggle too, you know, like, I let them sit in spaces where aunties are talking about domestic violence and sexual abuse and things like this. And I think a lot of people who aren't as exposed to those struggles might shelter their kids from that a bit more, or think it's inappropriate to talk about those things. But I think knowing the risk that our kids have in being caught up in that, it's important that we talk about it and be honest about it, because all of those conversations are in a way that's about keeping them safe and trying to change and challenge. So, I'm very open with my kids. They know Barker's story, and that's why my daughter loves her. Like, and she sees other women in her life who have been on, you know, similar journeys, and so she's exposed to that. But she then also gets to see this amazing, beautiful artist that Barker is on this huge platform with this big stage, and it's like, you can be that, you know. So we don't have to let our trauma keep us down. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for pushing through the nerves and finding your way here. And I wish you all the best of luck with continuing that journey towards intergenerational healing and combining your creative and social work practices. And thank you for joining us on Creative Tales today.
Thank you for having me. Always was, always will be. Oh my God, I'm sweating. Like literally sweating.